What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first of what will hopefully be many raid videos that will be on this channel. Today I want to go over some of the basics that I feel any new player should know when starting the game. To start with, it's important to understand the journey you're about to go through, or if you're a veteran player, where you currently stand in your journey. To make that easier, I'm going to break the game down into three stages: early game, mid game, and end game. Before I touch on what those stages mean, it's important to understand the way that progression in Raid works. Raid is an RPG, and for that reason, the entirety of the game is basically progression. There's a couple terms you need to be familiar with: free to play and pay to play. Many people will want to call pay to play pay to win, but that's not really applicable to Raid. Currently, there's no competitive aspect to Raid, so it's hard to really call it pay to win. Pay to progress would be more accurate, I suppose. Eventually, given enough time, free-to-play and pay-to-play players will end up at the same point, that is, in-game. So back to the stages. I'm going to be going over each stage briefly, and then I'll be following this intro video up with more in-depth videos in the future. Starting with early game. Early game is defined by a few distinct things: building an initial champion pool, establishing a dedicated farming champion, and leveling an initial 5-man team up. It's important to understand that players will progress at different rates, depending on what champions they get and how they use their assets like energy. A pay-to-play player may get through early game in less than a day, whereas a free-to-play player may be in early game for over a month. There's nothing wrong with either of these scenarios. Mid-game is characterized by the following: having successfully built a reliable farmer, having reached brutal campaign and now having the ability to farm 5-star gear, 3-starring all of the campaign, starting to build specialized teams for dungeons, arena, and clan boss, and having a pre-mastery clan boss team. Finally, in-game can be described as when you achieve the following: unlocking final tier masteries for a full team. This is known as the gateway to endgame, as it allows you to fight the higher tiered clan boss in dungeons. Setting up fully kitted special teams for dungeons, arena, and clan boss. Making a high speed efficiency farmer to farm the final tier brutal campaign in a few seconds. Building up a large champion pool for faction wars, and finally, fighting Nightmare Clan Boss. Let's talk about early game. I'm going to be going over what you should be doing as a new player to raid. The first step is picking a starting champion. I personally recommend Kale, as he can be used as both a farmer for starting out the campaign, and his poison will help you for early game clan bosses. The other starters are all viable and good as well if you feel inclined to pick them. So what do? Well, for starters, the game will walk you through a lot of the basics through the mission and challenge system in-game. So I'm going to skip through that and assume you follow the missions through to beating basic campaign on easy. By now you should have a basic understanding of dungeons, ranking up champions, and ascending champions. If not, just play the game a bit and it will become clear. What I want to talk about is where a lot of people start to get lost, and that is when they first get stuck. Eventually your starting character with his starting gear won't be enough to beat the levels any longer. This is where it's important to establish a strong character that can farm the campaign essentially solo. This is where your starter character comes in. They all have an AoE attack that allows them to clear effectively. I'm going to talk about Kale because he's my preference. The goal is going to be getting Kale, or your starter, powered up through gear, skill tomes, and ranking up. The easiest way to do this is to pick a 4-man champion team and keep leveling, ranking, and gearing up that 4-man team as much as you have to keep progressing through the campaign. Don't worry about 3-starring the campaign yet, just focus on progressing until you get to Brutal. The daily login rewards will be very helpful for this, especially the vampiric gear that is 4 and 5 stars. I suggest you put this on your starter and level that gear up. Once you get to Brutal, this is where you can slow down and repeatedly farm levels until you get white 5-star gear with the primary stats you want. I'll be going into specific builds for champions in a different video, so if you're unsure how to build your champions, definitely check those videos out or ask in the comments below. For turning your starter into a solid farming champion, I suggest putting them in 4 pieces of vampiric gear and 2 pieces of either crit or attack gear. For the gloves, chest, and boots, I recommend crit rate for the gloves and attack percent on the chest and boots. So to recap, your goals of early game are to establish a strong farmer that can solo the campaign, build up a champion pool, and get a dungeon team together. We just covered building a farmer, so next up is building a champion pool. For obvious reasons, this is the most RNG based part of the game, and this is where pay-to-play players will move ahead in progression much faster than free-to-play players. There's not a lot I can say about this in this video, as I'll dedicate an entire video to which champions are best for certain things, but for now, suffice to say that you just gotta roll a lot of shards. Even basic green shards can give you rare champions, and you can farm tons of green shards just playing the campaign. Finally, to wrap up the basics of early game, you need to start putting a dungeon team together. The basics of most dungeon teams are 2 to 3 attackers and 2 to 3 supports. Attackers are obvious, they just do a lot of damage. Supports are where people run into confusion. You want a variety of buffs and debuffs, but the most typical buffs to be looking for are speed boost, move bar boost, counter attack, attack up, and defense up. Any champions that can provide one or more of these buffs and or heals will make a good addition to an early game dungeon team. Next up is mid game. We're going to go over finishing out your farming character. We're going to discuss gearing your dungeon and arena teams in full 5-star gear. I'll touch on 3-starring the campaign, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll go over specialized teams for different activities, and finally we'll go over building your first CB team. By now you should have a farming character built up to at least level 50 and some basic gear on them. This is the part where you want to finish tweaking them around. It's time to go ahead and use them to level enough fodder champions up to get them all the way to 6-star, and ascend them up to the 6th ascension. After that you can make sure they've got some form of decent accessories if you're able to kill Spider, or just wait on the accessories. You'll also want to make sure you've got their skills leveled up and finally start working on some of the basic masteries for them. Definitely pick up the 5% crit rate and 10% crit damage masteries as early as you can. Once all of this is complete, you should have a farmer that can carry 3 food champs through all of Brutal, which will allow you to rank up your other champions very easily and efficiently. After you've gotten your farming character squared away, you should start farming food champions to level up the rest of your dungeon, arena, and clan boss champions. You might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone and take this opportunity to farm 5-star gear with the ideal stats for the rest of those champions while you're at it. Even white 5-star gear is very good to start out with. Once you've got 2 champions, your farmer plus 1 more, leveled to 60 and geared, you can go ahead and try to 3-star the rest of the campaign to get the last of the star rewards. It's worth noting if you've been lucky enough to pick up a strong legendary, you can do this even sooner. Let's talk about specialized teams. By this stage of mid-game, you hopefully have a little bit of variety in the number and type of rare, epic, and legendary champions you've acquired. This is the stage where you can start to level and gear more than just the initial 4 to 5 champions. The most likely areas you'll want to focus on first are Arena Team and a Clan Boss team. I'll talk more about the Clan Boss team in just a few minutes. I don't want to spend too much time talking about specific arena comps right now because I'll make another video specifically for arena teams. The purpose of this video is mostly just to touch on the general ideas of the stages. For dungeons, this is where you can level up and gear champions with specific mechanics to make certain dungeons easier. Examples of this would be champions with heal reductions for the Spirit Keep, or AoE champions for the Spider's Den, or champions with buff removal skills for the Magic Keep. Finally, I want to touch briefly on pre-mastery clan boss teams. There's basically 2 types of clan boss teams. Teams that have completed their masteries and have access to Giant Slayer and War Master, and teams that haven't. Starting out your first CB team, you're going to be looking to put together a pre-mastery team. Pre-mastery teams are all about debuffs, specifically poison and HP burn. This is why I suggest players start with Kale. When making your pre-mastery team, you want to look for champions that either have poisoning skills or an HP burn skill. It's also worth noting that HP burn doesn't stack like poison, so you only need 1. Speed buffs, counterattack buffs, and defensive buffs. When gearing your pre-mastery clan boss team, you want to maximize speed, accuracy, and defensive stats. For the most part, offensive stats won't matter as much. You'll never do as much damage as just stacking poisons. That's it for the basics of mid-game. Let's talk about endgame. First of all, when does endgame start? For the purpose of these videos, I'm going to say that endgame starts when you fully complete the masteries of a 5-man team. The reason for this is that masteries are often commonly referred to as the gateway to late game, or endgame, and it makes sense why that would be. Once you complete a masteried CB team, most players will increase their clan boss damage anywhere from 300 to 600%. This opens the door to hard, brutal, and nightmare clan boss skills, which yield the greatest rewards. Masteries will also greatly help with difficult dungeons like the Spider. Once you're in endgame, you should be able to fairly easily create 6-star champions through a dedicated speed farmer. Queen Eva and Bello are 2 very good champions to replace your starter farmer. I'll be making separate videos on this in the future. You should be able to farm epic level 5-star gear from Dragon and Ice Golem by now. You should be able to farm Masteries on new champions quickly by using champions that already have Masteries. By combining all of these things, it's time to start putting together some in-game specialized teams. I suggest you focus your effort on getting your CB team into shape first, because that's what your clan will be putting the most pressure on you for, and it yields the best rewards. However, after the CB team, you may want to work on separate 6-star teams for Arena, Spider, and so on. That's going to conclude the introductory video. I'll be making videos that go into everything from specific dungeons and boss mechanics, to different arena compositions, to breaking down the clan boss, to specific champion builds. If you have anything you want covered first, leave a message in the comments below and I'll prioritize those videos first.